Hey guys, welcome back to Big Shoulders, the Chicago podcast. Today is frankly a treat for me, and if you guys know anything about Chicago and the influencer scene, it should be a treat for you too. We have managed to pull in as guests today 77 flavors of Chicago with the great Dario and Sara.
Hey,
I need the millennial horn on that one that you drop every now and then, Dario.
yeah.
But I want to thank you guys for coming on. I have been watching you guys. I think you guys have been You've been cranking out these pods and videos on YouTube for 3 years now.
Yeah, it'll be 3 years in June. Yeah, June 10th or I forgot when that first day came out, but we say our first birthday was when we got seen in the newspaper, the 23rd, June 23rd.
It's so funny. Yeah, you guys are really blowing up every time I'll just Google 77 flavors of Chicago. I'm like, okay, they're in this magazine, they're in this paper. You guys are hanging out with Jeffrey Bear. You guys are living my life.
That's Daryl's childhood dream.
Yeah, man, that was honestly if we got time, we could talk about how that came about, but that's a dream of mine.
Yeah.
I know. I love seeing that happen because, if you're any type of Chicago kid, you grow up watching that dude and so many others. So to see that happen, I'm like, these guys just been cranking for a couple of years, and now they're sharing coffee with Jeffrey Bear and get the 411 on history. I'm like, amazing stuff.
Yeah.
But I guess maybe we could start there. Like, what was it that prompted you guys to start your podcast, start your show to begin with? Like, where did this come from?
So Dario bought $2,700 worth of equipment and surprised me with it.
Wow.
Because he had another podcast that he was working on. He wanted to improve the audio, and he was like, okay, just like put the headphones on. So
it sounded good.
It sounded great.
Yeah, I was just like, man, I never had anything this nice. So so when I put it on, I was like, this sounds crazy.
Mm-hmm.
Sarah, you should put the headphones on, see how you sound. She was like, we should do a podcast. I sound good.
Literally.
And honestly, we thought, what's two things we like? We like Chicago food in general, and then I love Chicago. So, we combined the two. And honestly, that process to think of it only like took 15 minutes, if that.
And it was meant to be like a date night.
Yeah.
And then literally our second episode was out, and the food critic from the Tribune found the podcast, and he was like, hey, we had like 90 followers on Instagram. Like, I have no idea how he even found it. And he was like, can I give you guys a call to chat about this? I was like, sure. So he called us and he's like, are you actually recording outside? And we're like, yeah, we're literally sitting in front of Navy Pier.
Yeah.
And then he asked if we're really a couple, if the banter is real.
Is that real? And we were like,
I was like, we didn't think anyone was going to listen to this. So yes, it's very real.
Wow.
And it kind of like blew up our life in like the best way possible.
So a date night podcast about food, and the rest is history. That is, and literally, I guess the rest is history. Was it always going to be having the component of the history of, because you guys went through, obviously it's 77 community areas, but there's more neighborhoods as well. You guys went through all of them. Was that always going to be a component of it? Was it always going to be history oriented? How did that fit in?
Yeah, so I think we wanted to lean into the history first, and so that's kind of like where we said, hey, let's do that. But the food is always going to be the connector, and then we kind of came up with the idea of, if we're going to eat food, let's represent the community area that we're in, kind of pay homage to the food. And early on, I think we wanted to shed light on the neighborhoods and the community areas in a good way, and food is always a good way. And after telling history, that could be such a heavy topic. So it was always frame of mind, history, and then food being the connector. Fun fact, though, it was going to be, we were going to have a sit down like the whole time over food and talk history throughout. But we quickly changed that because we were like, that's going to
be... No one wants to hear talking and
eating. Yeah. So we were like,
we did not. That's a very like niche.
I think it's the first time we ever said that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, I've watched you guys sort of morph and try new things. So, whatever you guys decide, you guys, every turn you've made so far has been really good. Like you've only grown and you've only gotten, I don't want to say gotten better, because I'm just feeling
So,
I agree. I think.
I mean, I went from watching you guys on some episodes, like on your couch, talking about like Washington Park, and just being pulled in, and then all of a sudden you guys are like Carnival, eating incredible Latin food, and just sort of watching the arc of it has been really cool. I like how you're going the route of, because we all know as Chicagoans that the media likes to focus on certain things and sometimes only focus on certain things. And you guys, I think, nailed it with one. I think Chicago's true religion outside of sports is food. And food is like the most effective, optimistic, and loving form of sharing your culture, like no matter where you're from. And to watch you guys just jump through the entire city, and we literally go from ethnicity to ethnicity, country of origin, and even just homegrown Chicago stuff, like the Italian beef. People think, oh, okay, that comes from Italy. No, it was made by an Italian in Chicago, just like the jibarito was made by a Puerto Rican in Chicago, and all of these things that I literally have family in California watching you guys, and like, oh, I had no idea about da 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 da. And like my nephew who is a DJ, who's like the coolest kid out there, just watched your episode on Daniel Burnham, and he's like, we need to go to that museum in Evanston. I'm like, for real? So you guys, you all are reaching out to people that I'm just like, oh, okay, this is awesome.
Yeah, I think that is we know that's the goal, and part of it, reason why you kind of seen the evolution of the podcast is because we ourselves kind of understand the audience that we've created and that we have, and the necessity to tell a true story. And it's super important for us to like touch on all the ethnicities, touch on all the different backgrounds of people and where they come from as it relates to Chicago, and to be able to reach out to different people. I think some part of everybody loves to hear these fun facts, and especially when you have a city as polarizing as Chicago, when you hear these interesting things, when you start to hear the negative stuff, you're like, but wait a minute.
Right.
You know what I mean? So,
I mean, like, we talk about Inglewood often just because Dario grew up near there and stuff like that. So Inglewood is one of the community areas that's technically in 6 wards. So it has 6 different aldermen. And so it's really hard to get anything done, basically, right? And it is probably the community area with the largest number of population, like grouped organizations, like people from the community have created these organizations that have now been there for decades. And all the work that you see done in Inglewood, I don't want to like kind of sideswipe the alderman people and like what they're doing, but a lot of the work that's being done in Inglewood is from these community organizations. We actually have we just wrote a piece on Dion's Chicago Dream, and he just gave away.
I love that guy. That was a great episode. That guy's really doing great work.
Yes.
We're contributors for Edible Magazine here in Chicago, and so we're writing about his milestone of giving away 1 million free pounds of food, of fresh food, out of Inglewood. I mean, there's Rage, which has been around for over a decade.
Of Great Inglewood.
Right. They've done so much great work in Inglewood. We've come to know them like on a personal level. And so, yes, there's obviously always stuff to improve on. We always say that like if you love a place, you're going to criticize it and you want it to be better. But there's constructive criticism, and then there's just negativity that we see so often that honestly, at this point, we just delete those comments. Like I'm not even engaging with you. Like I don't want to see it. You're on the wrong page. Like this is not where this is not it. But yeah, I mean, that's like the main thing that we've learned over the last 2.5 years is not once were we like in fear for our lives.
No.
Like we walk around with thousands of dollars worth of equipment, and we say that all the time. Like we're not, you know what I mean? Like you look at us and you see cameras and stuff. Not once do we feel unsafe.
You're not afraid?
Like,
because I feel like that's a bad sign, if you didn't if you had that feeling of fear, and we want to dispel that. So early on, when you saw us on the couch, what people didn't see is that we were walking around first. We've always been feet to ground, but we would come in, and I think that was us trying to find our rhythm and how do we deliver the product. Yeah, but now, once we realize, you know what, let's just go ahead and sit out in the park. let's just let's sit out in the park, because that was the, if you remember, we went from the couch to sitting somewhere.
Yes, I'm like, oh right, the new set. Oh wait, it's the park. That's great.
Yeah,
No,
yeah.
I really, that's something that, one thing that endeared me to you guys just immediately was, it was just an effortless conversation. The love was there. Just you guys are such a great combo. You guys, I was thinking about this the other day about the two of you. You guys are the perfect sort of like, you're the perfect two sides of the Chicago coin. One, Dario, you are this homegrown South Side Chicago dude, dyed in the wool, just homegrown, just you're there. And then you have Sarah, who is this, like, again, I know that you spent summers in Chicago, but you're from Jordan. But that's the thing, is there's always this new, fresh injection of cultures from around the world that we sew into this big tapestry that we call Chicago. And it's one of the things that really upsets me about the immigration conversation, that, not to get political, but the immigration conversation that we're having in this country right now, because I feel like we should be focused on, we're dealing with real live human beings, and we should focus on solutions. So whatever side you're on, can we just have a conversation?
Yeah.
And I feel like Chicago so perfectly encapsulates the immigrant experience in the United States, because you see it everywhere. Whether it be a neighborhood or a street or a business, people come and they rep where they're from with pride, with their food, and it just you can come from any four corners of the world and become a Chicagoan. And that just makes me super proud to say that I'm from there, despite how we get portrayed in the media. And this is the beauty, I think, of what you guys are doing. It's like, I know what you may have heard, but let me tell you this. And then boom, you lay down 1,700 fun facts over the course of like 75 episodes. And that's how you change the image of a city. That's how you change your reputation. And it's just one conversation at a time. You guys are crushing it.
Hey, thank you, man. We truly
I didn't know
appreciate
we were
it.
coming on here just to get compliments.
Yeah, no.
Oh, yeah, no, I have been flying the 77 flavors flag, like in my house here. Like I have in the living room, I've got you guys on the big screen, and like, oh, Kyle's homesick again. Okay, So and then here's the thing. Then I'll get back to the west side of Chicago, and I'm like, Dad, you got to see this, and I'll be showing my father. It's like, oh, have you ever been there? It's like, I've never been there. It's like, we should go. That type of stuff. I didn't even know they had Italian beefs that far south. I'm like, of course. That type of stuff. So I'm able to share with my Chicago family, my dad, who's dyed in the wool, who is going, he is that guy. He's an old school Catholic, blue collar union guy that I can take him to Demera. Thank you guys, by the way. I can introduce him to Ethiopia. Like, you look at this guy, I'm like, okay, I think this guy wants to make America great again. And then you get to know him, and he's like, that Ethiopian food's really great. And then I can pull my too cool for school nieces and nephews from California come in, and literally we do nothing. I make them, when they come in, I make them get their CTA pass. I'm like, we are not taking Ubers. We're not driving. We are walking, and we are taking CTA, and we walk 12, 15 miles a day. And every neighborhood we go through, I got one of them like, hang on a second. And they're looking up rent. Like, they're it's seriously, like, I have one niece who I took her and the kids, I call them, I took them to Lincoln Square and was heartbroken this was a couple years ago, heartbroken to find that the Chicago Brauhaus had closed. So many places didn't make it through the pandemic, but then we found like this really cool Turkish cafe that's right there. She gets on FaceTime with her boyfriend, who's in Northern California, and says this out loud. I can see myself raising kids here.
Oh, wow. But you know what? That's the beauty. That's the beauty of Chicago. Literally. And that's the part that, so glad that we can help a little bit with this kind of reach and encourage people to kind of do that kind of research on their own. Because,
we give you the crust.
Right.
We're giving you the basic knowledge, and then we want you to be like, so we did the Daniel Burnham episode, right? And we talked about how he did the plan of Evanston, or like contributed towards the plan of Evanston. This lady DMs us, and she's like, I always go to this park called Burnham Place, and I never thought why it was called Burnham Place. She lives in San Francisco, and I was like, well, if you listen to the episode, you learned that Daniel Burnham also contributed to the Plan of San Francisco. And she was like, I'm going to go down a rabbit hole. And like, she went through this whole thing that like now she lives in, like, that's her home. And she was like, I did not know that. And like, now I just got to learn something entirely new. So yeah, I mean, Chicago's everywhere. Like everywhere you go, there's a little bit of Chicago. So I feel like that's a lot of our listeners. I mean, majority of our listeners are from the state of Illinois, but a ton of them aren't. So we have a ton of listeners in New York, a ton in LA, some overseas that are like
Germany right now.
Yeah, we were on the charts.
Well, Germany makes sense. Germany makes sense because like half of my father's family is German, and sausage. I mean, if you so much like German food, and I can't remember if you guys ever did it, and I would highly recommend it. So forgive me if you did, but there's a place called Laschet's Inn in Irving Park.
Yep.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. And that's one of my favorite places to go.
Good.
And it's funny because people think German food. They're like, like they don't like sauerkraut, cabbage, sausage. You don't think it's not as colorful as say Mexican food or Italian food has a great universal reputation. And you know, I'll take people there, and so people are like, oh, this is really good. So when you say there's you have German fans, I'm like, that totally makes sense because there's so many. Like, what was that? I read something. BBC said that the overwhelming majority of Americans of European descent, most of them are German. And then you look around at names going back 150 years, like, oh, those are totally German names. So sorry, just a little fun fact about the German lineage in Chicago. So
interesting.
Yeah,
that's
good
really
stuff.
Cool.
In terms of what are things, because you guys were talking about like you were going to a park there, Sarah, and you know, now that you know about Burnham, it's like, oh gosh, I was sitting in this park the whole time, had no idea of this deep history. I learned a lot when you guys started. I think it was you guys were talking about the river and talking about the Y symbol.
Yep.
And I hadn't realized that was everywhere. And now I can't walk anywhere in Chicago without seeing a library, like at the Chicago Theater. You see it on library signs, you see it on street signs, you see it on buildings. Like I've been in Chicago my entire life and never noticed those things. What are some things like outside of like maybe like are there parts of town that obviously all the parts of town you've gone to have been great, but are there places that you went to, it's like, oh, we have to come back here, or places that's like, I can't believe I never came here, or like particular, I don't know, parks, businesses, restaurants, anything that was like a real surprise that sort of burned in your memories?
Pullman right away.
Pullman was
Pullman's awesome.
Yes, Pullman is because Pullman, a great portion of Pullman is a national park. And I think that's what a lot of people don't understand.
You can get your stamp.
You can get like not only can you come to Chicago and see the big architecture and landscapes, but you can get a national park stamp. I think like that's such a crazy thing. But more than that, that was I want to say the first place that I wanted to go when we started and said, hey, I can't wait for that episode, right? And then we went there. It lived up to every bit of the hype that I created in my own head. And Sarah and I were just looking. It's so cool. Yeah, like you literally go back in time and you got these pieces and elements there. It's just crazy. And to hear the history of how, you know, the Brotherhood of the Sleeping Car Porters started there. The first Black union started, and then just unions in general started. Like it's
the reason we
literally it was Chicago that literally gave us the weekend with the Haymarket riots, right?
Yeah. We got the weekends because Henry Ford was like, he was like, hey, you know what? Let's just do something different. Because
mine was probably, I have two answers, if that's okay. The first one
as many as you like.
Yeah.
The first one was the stockyards.
Oh yeah.
I had no idea what the stockyards were. I'd never been there before. I didn't know what the back of the yards was. Never been there. We went and met with Professor Pasiga, who has written like the book on the stockyards. Like he is the stockyards expert, and he took us through this museum in this building called the Plant. The building was once a hog
meatpacking house.
And it's now a sustainable incubator for an incubator for sustainable businesses that are in the food space.
Yeah.
So it's like it took like a 180 spin of like what it was and what it is now. And he walked us through. He gave us like the breakdown on the stockyards, and it actually blew my mind. Like to think that Henry Ford got the idea of the assembly line from the Chicago stockyards is insane to me. Like that's so wild. And then the second one, I would say. Just the fact that we get to live in a city that has an open house, like the Chicago Architecture Center puts on the Open House Chicago every year, and we get to go to all these buildings for free. Like the amount we're community partners with them, so we do like a route, like a 77 flavor Chicago route for them every year. And the fact that like I can't tell you how much work goes into this. By the way, like they start working on it next month in March for October. Like it's insane.
Wow.
And last year they had 175 sites that you could go in all over the city, and they're constantly expanding. You can go into things like design studios and artist studios to like major buildings that you would never have access to, and it's all for free. Like that is crazy.
I think one more that was there's a bunch we can keep on doing this, but Hagwish was that's insane. But when we sat in Jane Addams' bedroom,
that was
like
wild.
that right there, and recorded a podcast in her bedroom.
Yeah, that was crazy.
That was probably, I think that was the first time I was like,
free.
what the right,
it's a free museum on campus of UIC.
Yeah. And not only that, they have the original keys to the house in a case that you can see. You like
and her FBI file.
Yeah, her
she was
FBI
under investigation.
So
Man.
Crazy.
You know you're doing good work when the FBI has a file on you, right?
Exactly. It was a thick one too. I was
for real.
She was really.
That's crazy. She's helping people. Well, watch her.
Yeah,
right.
Yeah, watch her. She wants women's rights. Nope.
Crazy. Yeah. My gosh.
Investigate.
Well, I love the fact that like you guys have been able to get into all these places and you're welcomed. You know, it's again, not that I would assume that you wouldn't be able to, but I'm sure it's on some level a little bit intimidating to go into these places that are literally like living pieces of history and asking, hey, can we talk for an hour inside of here? And the fact that they were so gracious, that's awesome.
They love it. Like they actually love that. Like when I tell you something like the Glessner House, which is
that was nuts.
Incredible, and I think everyone should go. The fact that not every tour is sold out is wild.
Yeah.
Like, you know what I mean? So like they love that it's being highlighted. Like they love for us. We have never ever gotten attitude from anyone that we asked them to do this shit for free. We're like, can we please take up 3 hours of your time or 2 hours of your time and walk around for free, get this free tour? They're like, hell yeah.
And you know what's even more than that though too is a lot of these places Chicagoans have never even been to, and I think that's the most surprising thing is like you know we were when we had our little series in the Hancock Center, you know we would have people come out to the Hancock and be like, yo, this is my first time being there.
Like I've been living in Chicago for 40 years and never been here.
Yeah, and at 40, and I'm like, how have you never been? But you know that kind of explains a whole bigger picture, which we're trying to paint here for people. Hey, look, you belong in these spaces, and on the flip side of that, hey, there's people that haven't been to these spaces and think they don't belong. So,
and that's one thing we always talk about is seeing people that look like Dario and I. I mean, the majority of media is white, and like if we're being honest, that is who it caters to. And so like seeing a Black person and a brown person telling you like we're in this space and we're having a great time, you should also come, is like the best.
That works all the time.
One time he was on TV and we were in the Hancock, and this person, like a family showed up and they're like, the only reason we came is because you look like us and you were here. Like verbatim, that is what they said.
Well, here's the crazy part about that too. Remember, it was a white guy that came up to me also that same day and said, hey, I saw you on TV and I like to be here. And I was like, I think that was the first time Sarah and I both realized
there's like value.
You guys have a universal appeal, and it comes from the fact that you love the city the way we love the city. Like that's the thing. I think it's that universal love for the city, for its culture, for its food, for its architecture, for its art, all of that, and it oozes out of every pore in you guys. So regardless of what your background, like again, you got me. you got half my family, we're white, we're German, we're Filipino, we're all over the place, and we're literally going to places that, I hadn't heard about that before. So you guys are sort of these incredible ambassadors for the city, and the fact that you're reaching into different communities, I think, is awesome. Because I think this is one of the challenges that we have as Chicagoans is Chicago is a comfortable city. Chicago, every neighborhood has its beef joint, its hot dog joint, it has its pizza joint, it has its cafes, it has its bars, its taverns. And so in so many ways, each neighborhood is a little spoiled because we all have our joints, our places we like to go to. And it's very easy to forget, you know what? We really should go down to 63rd Street and get some good soul food, or we'll go far north and we'll go to the Fish Keg that's right on the border of Chicago and Evanston and get some fried fish, or we should go west and go to Humboldt Park. And I feel like not only are you opening up Chicago to the country and the world, you've definitely opened it up for Chicagoans too, because it can just get real easy to just, you know what, I'm going to get a pizza, get a couple of pops, and then watch the Cubs, and that's that. And
going home.
Realize you have this world unto ourselves in this entire city, man.
So we travel the world, and I'll be honest, my first time traveling to Jordan, and we went to Egypt. One of the first things that I said was to myself, I was like, man, Chicago calls itself the greatest city in the world. That's a bold claim standing in front of the pyramids. You know what I mean? Like that's
right.
That's a bold claim. And then that's a bold claim being inside of Jordan and Petra and seeing the Roman amphitheater in the middle of Amman. That was the first time I really thought, okay, why does Chicago call itself the greatest? But then when you think about everything Chicago has done and how down from the cleanliness to the amenities that it has to the topography of it, honestly, you know what I mean? You know what I mean? Like, you got so much to Chicago that it's checking a lot of boxes that it probably shouldn't, and doing it well and holding its own to the world, and people want to come here. I think that's what makes you feel, okay, Chicago's the greatest city in the world because we can connect. You know what I mean? Maybe not because of all the ancient history and all the other things you can find somewhere else, but because it is probably the greatest connector in the world is to come to this centralized place and you could be good. You know what I mean? Like, that's what I think is man, I can go on and on about the.
No, I know. I absolutely, I agree with you. It's Chicago. I mean, is quite literally the sort of central connector for the country. Yeah. But we're also a central connector for the world. If I think back to, I remember being in junior high and having friends that were Laotian refugees, and I remember being in high school and meeting people that were from the Kosovo War, and had experienced that, and meeting people that ordinarily I probably wouldn't connect with because they were on the other side of the planet. And these folks had set up shop and home in Chicago and were introducing us to, we would go out to places like Arlington Heights, and when I was taking Japanese in school, I'd go there and I'd buy magazines and see what I could translate. And then we'd go to Devon and try Indian food. We are so blessed, and not only are we're blessed in terms of just the sheer variety of people you can meet and food you can try. If you really, really want to, you don't have to own a car. And this is something that I explain, like my family in California, both Northern and Southern California, when they come, they're always, are you sure we're going to be fine on I'm like, we're fine. We're absolutely fine. Yeah. And then they literally taste everything from O'Hare Airport all the way down to Midway and everything in between. And rarely, sometimes if we're out really late on a Saturday, we're going back to the west side. It's like, okay, I don't think we're going to be taking the train, and we'll take a lift back. But they're always so surprised at how easy it is. And, it's something that I'll have family members of mine complain. It's like, it's not what it used to be. And then I'll if I'm, in California for a little while, I'll come back. I'm like, I was 15 minutes ahead on every trip I took on the Western Avenue bus. What are you talking about? The problems, or even friends that I have in New York that will talk about, some of the troubles they're having with MTA. And I think to myself, okay, maybe I had to wait an extra 5 minutes once this week.
Yeah.
We really have the best of so much. And I love the fact that more and more people, because of guys like you and because of TV shows like The Bear and all these folks, that like I literally have what was it? I found somebody oh God, where was I? I was in Northern California and I started talking about architecture to someone, and this guy like literally interrupts, like, "Are you from Chicago?" I'm like, "Yeah." He's like, "Have you seen Jeffrey Bear's new most beautiful places in Chicago?" I'm like, "Yeah." The guy was from Utah. Like,
Wow.
so just to kind of give you a sense of the reach.
We're everywhere.
Yeah.
Yeah. And like growing up, I think the most universal thing for me as a Chicagoan was knowing that sort of Cubs fandom. And I as personally as a Sox fan, I'm not against that. I'm pro Chicago. Whoever's getting it, who's ever in a championship, who's ever going to the World Series, I'm in the tank for them. But as someone who is more of a Sox fan than a Cubs fan, who comes from a family of Cubs fans, seeing Cubs fandom culture, it's unbelievable. It is everywhere. It's to the tip of Canada, down to Latin America. There's folks in Europe that are watching Cubs games. And it's so, again, to see it and really starting to recognize this fandom outside of just sport, which sports are universal, and to see it now bleeding out of that and people really giving us, people pushing through negative media coverage and say, you know what, this guy Dario and this lady Sara, I'm gonna go with them just for a second here. So just hang on, and you guys are changing hearts and minds one pod at a time. So it's amazing.
I think what's funny is they always say like when you're reporting the news, the horrific shit is what's going to get you the views. But I feel like the fact that we're 3 years in and we're still getting new followers and new listeners from around the city, around the country, around the world, is proof that people want to hear good things. Like no one wants to turn like the demographic that wants to turn on the news at 6 p.m. and talk about gun violence is very small. Like that is like not, I don't know, but
it's not real. That's what it's not a real thing.
You're right. It's if the adage for probably the last 50 years of most media is if it bleeds, it leads. And I think people are in the age of social media, even though the algorithm can elevate a lot of negative stuff, people are finally getting a choice. People are finally like, oh wait, I just watched a walking tour on Instagram and everybody looked pretty cool. I had family from California back in November, and we were walking around. Like I literally will make them walk from Humboldt Park. So like California, we'll walk all the way to like Fulton Market. And by the time we get there, everybody's super hungry, and then we eat. But we were out. I had family in Tuesday through Sunday, so we were out walking past midnight, Tuesday night, Wednesday night, Thursday night, Friday night, Saturday night. Whether it was the middle of the week or Saturday night, there were young women walking around various parts of the West Side without a care in the world. No one was having a problem. No one was causing a problem. And it was something that to finally get family members that had never been to Chicago to see that. And I literally had one nephew like, I'm really sorry. Like he was talking some shit about Chicago. I'm like, well, son, you've never left the Bay Area. You don't know. And he's like, I'm really sorry about this. Is one of the dopest places I've ever been. I was like, wow. To get a young man in his early 20s to admit he's wrong does not happen often.
That's a very rare. You should encapsulate that moment.
Right? I'm just like, hang on, let me record this. For posterity. But it just, that's the thing is if I can do anything for Chicago and I've even put this offer out. I told people like, hey, you want to meet me in Chicago? I will personally take you around. I will help you avoid all the tourist traps. I will take you. We'll do downtown, but then we're going to get into the neighborhoods. We're going to talk with the people, and I'm going to show you that whatever you think Chicago is, it is way more than that.
Way more. You got to carry the 3 multiplied by 5. You know what I mean? Like it's crazy. You were, as you were talking, kind of the due diligence of the podcast, and I think as much as we take in and we relish what the feedback is and like all the success this podcast has gotten, I think we understand more and more that this is an untapped medium. And
Yes.
you kind of like what you're saying, and what we're all saying here is like the media is going to be the media, like the same way they have been 50, 60 years, right? But they're not tapping into people got options, like you said, Kyle. Like, I think I'll though listen to them because they're telling me probably more truth and good things, stuff that I want to hear. And so the podcast is always going to be Sarah and I's, like baby. As much as we do social media and we wrap our head around that, the podcast is always going to be that thing where it started for us, but I don't know. You've heard me say, how you doing? You know what I mean? And Sarah always be like, who are you talking to? I'm like, well, for me, I'm talking to the person, you know what I mean? Like, this is my one chance to like talk to everybody that listens to us. You know what I'm saying? And so it feels that connection. If I can just sway your opinion, I'm gonna start there. You know what I mean?
That is the key. Is you guys talk real. You have real conversation because you'll say how you doing, and then Sarah will tell you, "Oh, this week has got me like just talking to this lady got me fucked up." And that's so real. It's so Chicago. So right off the bat, we're not 30 seconds in, and anybody who's listening is like, "Okay, that doesn't sound like it's prepared. That doesn't sound like they're reading from a script," and that pulls people in because we won't ever say, "Okay, we don't have our problems." But okay, can I tell you a few other things? And you're absolutely right when you say people want to hear the good stuff. They want to hear about positivity because life is really short. And here's the thing: people can turn you guys on, and you're like as the pod starts, you're laughing on the way in, or you're cracking a joke or whatever. That right there is so authentic. It's so undeniable that people are like, okay, I like to laugh. I want to know what they're laughing at. These two folks live in Chicago. They're around Chicago. They live, eat, and breathe Chicago. You know what? I don't know if that reporter is from Chicago. I don't know if that gubernatorial candidate has spent much time in Chicago. I think I'm going to talk with the folks that are from there for once.
You're 100% right. And trust me, we've been in some of these rooms where you're like, oh, you're not even from Chicago. You know what I mean? Like,
I've seen a reporter that came and did a piece on Inglewood, and her whole shtick is that she's like a lover of Chicago, and then asked the question of like, how do we safely get out of the neighborhood?
Oh my God.
Yeah, right.
And like, this is a respected reporter, and I just looked at the person in the room with me, and I was like, that is
that's nuts.
A wild question. And all they said was the same way you got in. Just
come on.
Yes, I don't know. And she was like, I don't want to get into any like trouble. And they were like, you're not.
That's gonna get you in trouble.
What,
like
that was So
I've never. Again, I split time. For those people that have watched this pod and the other pods that I do, I split time of my year between Chicago and LA. I started out as a stage actor and a playwright in Chicago, and have been trying to get stuff going out in LA with screenplays and stuff like that. And so it's something that I've noticed, whether you are something that both Chicago and LA have in common is nobody knows more about Chicago than somebody who's never spent time there. Nobody knows more about LA than somebody who's never spent time there. I was a rideshare driver in both cities. And that came up all the time. Like, it's like, oh, have you ever driven down to South Central? I'm like, all the time. Well, watch your wallet. I'm like, I've never been. I've never had a problem. If anything, my folks in South LA, Southeast LA, just like South side of Chicago, West side of Chicago, nobody bothers me. If for nothing else, I'm giving them the ride. But it's it's always from people that aren't. And again, I'm not one of those guys that's okay, you're from Chicago. Where'd you go to high school? Not one of those guys. Because the love of Chicago, you can come from Venezuela, Jordan, or Joliet and become a Chicagoan. If you have the love, who cares? It's all one love of Chicago. But it is always interesting to occasionally bump into somebody or have a conversation with somebody when I'm in LA and people are like, where you're from? It's like, I'm from Chicago. People be like, no. Just relax. Relax. Whatever you've heard, let's have a conversation. Everything's fine. I'm not strapped. I've actually had more weapons pointed at me in LA County than I have had in my entire life in Chicago. So, and that's not an attack on LA. That's not. But in terms of, again,
if you're being real,
just like fuck what you heard. Let me tell you where let me tell you my actual firsthand experience, not somebody's propaganda, not somebody's campaign slogan. Let me tell you where I'm literally coming from. So that's goes a long way.
And it does. So that's the importance of our, the YouTube channel and the social media. That's why you'll always see us if we talk about something. We're in front of it. We'll be right there because we're not going to be on the couch talking about, hey, this is that, and showing you a picture. No, let's go out here to the Ida B. Wells statue. Let's go out here to DuSable, wherever we're at, the north side, the furthest north point. Let's go there and show the people that we're there and we comfortable. We having fun. Like it's representation is everything. We know that, and it's very important that the outside of those people that know more than us, it's important that they see. Oh, wait a minute, I might have to go and read some more research before I come back to that person because they actually know. You know what I mean? Like it's almost like fun in a very very like egotistical way, almost like we proved you wrong. We don't even have to say it. We just did it, and like you're wrong.
Literally.
Well, I think if there's a city that deserves to brag on what it does well, I think Chicago has more than earned that because we are sadly the most demonized city in media. We are constantly on offense. And it's not deserved. I think if people really give Chicago a chance, and I don't care what neighborhood you're talking about,
right.
Real life human beings, people just doing what they got to do and just taking it one day at a time. That sort of universal human experience, we need more of that. And you guys go there and you do the thing, and you do it with a positivity and an optimism that you can't fake.
Right.
And that's more powerful than any negative headline, I think, that you can give, because I see the tide turning. Like I'll just type in Chicago influencer, Chicago podcast on YouTube, and every time I do it, there's more stuff going on, and you can see it. You have a lot of stuff downtown, but it's starting to bleed further west, further south, further north. People are starting to realize that there's more to it.
Yes, I mean, and what's really cool and the people element. So I do the photography a whole bunch, and I shot Rage's Christmas party the last couple years, and this year, it was literally 2 blocks from my old house, in Chicago, and I was like having a moment, and I remember just sitting there like, man, all these people are just having fun, like enjoying their time. Meanwhile, there's somebody in a suburb that's saying that these are bad people, and you're like, literally, it's crazy.
No one that lives in Chicago hates living in Chicago. Like I can almost put all my money on that. Like if you live here, you probably love living here.
You love it. Like what's not to love?
Like,
well, I tell people all the time, and this is not a dig on anybody else. And it's I full disclosure, I have lived in New York. I have friends and family that are New Yorkers. I love New York. It is a world-class city. It is a special place. But I will still say that Chicago is sort of like, people say, how would you describe Chicago? I mean, it's cleaner, greener, friendlier New York, a little less expensive than New York. Still have wide-ranging public transportation, incredible food. But more than that, it's, to your point, it's the people that make it. Do we complain about taxes? Do we complain about politics? Do we complain about the winters can be a little rough sometimes. Yes, but you can go to world-class museums all winter. You can go to incredible restaurants and cafes all winter, and then hey, when the weather breaks, you can still do all that stuff. You can do summertime sky. You can do the Chris Kindle markets in the fall. There's never a downtime for, like I tell people, you move to Chicago and you're bored, you're doing something wrong.
Right. Literally. And there's so much to do for free. Like the public library gives you access to so much stuff for free. Like, especially if you have kids. If you have kids, you can get passes to pretty much anything for free. Like all the museums, you can get into the aquarium for free. There's like events that I go to this, I've talked about it much on the podcast, but I go to this crochet class every Tuesday, and it's 2 hours and it's free. Like they give you the supplies, they give you the needle. Like
Wow.
And they have book clubs, they have stuff, they have a teen corner. So like if you're a teenager, you can go and like hang out and use the computer, or there's books. Like
that aspect of exactly what she's talking about is what a lot of people, when you talk negative about the city, you miss out on a lot of things, and a lot of residents here in Chicago don't realize some of these things. So it's important to talk. For example, just hearing you talk about the library, Chicago's first municipal, cultural center was the Chicago Cultural Center. It was Chicago's first major library too, main library. That was the first main cultural center, free cultural center in any large city ever. You know what I mean? Like in the United States. And so we have literally been giving blueprints to other cities around the country on how to do certain things.
like 130
So
years.
so when you realize people talk about Chicago and you're like, but do you realize that idea came from Chicago? You know what I mean? Like the same people you talk trash about, we're enjoying these amenities. You know what I mean? Like
Well, that's again, that's to the strength of Chicago is, again, Chicago wouldn't still be there. We wouldn't be moving and shaking and doing everything we do if we didn't have civic pride, but then this incredible infrastructure below it, that if you really want to learn something new or you want to try a class, you need only go to your local library. You need only go to a cultural center. I mean, how many of the museums are free on Tuesdays? And so you can experience art, and you can go to the DuSable Museum, and then you can go to the Cultural Center, and then you can go to the Art Institute, and all the while going through those places, eat in those incredible neighborhoods, mom and pop shops. It's, again, all these things that people say that they want in a life in a city. I'm like, I got one for you.
Right.
My friend came to visit from Seattle. She's like, I didn't know Chicago had beaches. I was like, yeah, like 20 of them.
Yeah, right.
What do you mean?
And that's being generous. I think it's like 36 or something like that.
And they're free
Speaking of
and not obstructed. So
Right. No, well, that's another thing that we're really blessed with, is that we had truly progressive multimillionaires in the last century that said, yeah, this is beautiful and amazing. You know what I'm going to do? I'm going to buy it. I'm going to make sure everybody gets it. Like, find me another place in the country, around the world, where somebody says, yeah, I think this is good for everybody, and I'm going to make sure that everybody gets. That's again, truly amazing. That's a very we stand on the shoulders of giants by having that. Speaking of beaches, Sarah, one of my most reluctant nephews, when he finally got his ass into Chicago, when we were flying, because we were flying in O'Hare, he looks out the window and he sees Lake Michigan. And again, I'm not going to name him, but he's like, "We near an ocean?" I'm like,
stop.
no, son, that is Lake Michigan. Looks really big. It's like it's a great lake. I'm like, oh, it's really, I'm like, yes, it is.
I think people think an ocean is just because it's large. Like, no, there's salt water, there's fresh water. Like, it's the size isn't determinant of whether it's an ocean or a lake or a sea.
But you know what's crazy is seeing all those buildings push right up against an edge like that. That is I mean, I don't care. The flight back into Chicago from coming outside of anywhere is probably one of the greatest sights in the world, because you do see all this water and you fly over it every time you come into the city to land. And yet here's all these tall little buildings sticking out.
Well, it is
fake constantly.
I'm sorry,
no, I say it always looks fake. Like at sunset, it looks the city looks like it's
It's not
it's the architecture is just not real.
Well, again, we one, we have this amazing lakefront. Two, we have amazing, far-reaching, affordable, reliable public transportation. But then you have this beautiful piece of art that I like to call the Chicago skyline. And again, I know I'm probably biased, but I've been to other cities. I've been to different places. I've like throughout the country, internationally, and in terms of just the pure composition of the buildings across the lakefront, it is the most beautifully composed skyline in the world. I will put it up against, and you're absolutely right. When I've been away or I'm coming back from a place, like you guys have had those where you go someplace and your vacation is not a vacation, and you're flying back and you're just like, and then you look out that window, and there it is. You've got Hancock over there, you've got Sears over there, and you've got everything filling in the middle. There is no better feeling, like we're home. We're home.
Dario shoots. He shoots like going south on 9094 all the time. He's taken up his drone there, and we call them the bookmarks because you see. Oh yeah, they're like or bookends. Yeah.
You know what's crazy too is what people don't realize about Chicago is that we burned down. Like this city had to start over.
I mean, that's why it's great. We had the opportunity to rebuild.
Yeah,
right. We get to do it right.
Yeah, right. We had a chance to rebuild.
Maybe not what we were doing before.
And that's right. 150 years of from 71 to now. That's 150 plus years of just us rebuilding. That's you name another city that is, you know what I mean, like that can do that in the time frame. Right. You know what I mean, like just to and realistically, you know, we're talking the city was starting to be rebuilt for the World's Fair 22 years after that happened. So it's crazy.
To close that gap, to literally go from your city's gone to bam, World's Fair. Not only World's Fair, we beat out Paris.
Yeah.
You know, before that.
Right.
It speaks to the character that like I love watching any documentary that's about the Great Chicago Fire because you hear about how like the devastation was unbelievable. And people were like, I ain't leaving. Yeah. We're not leaving. We're gonna build back and we're gonna do this. And they did. And that's one thing that again, that is starting to finally get out, that sense of Chicago culture that again, like every major metropolitan city that experiences challenges, but get in there and you'll see whether you're a blue collar or white collar, if you're an artist or you're somebody who is just, you know, laying drywall, there is a can-do, roll up your sleeves. I don't care if I get a little dirty. Let's do the job. Let's make the money. And then let's go to the hat and get a pastrami and let's get a euro or whatever. That's Chicago. And so even though there's that massive stretch of a century plus since the Chicago Fire, I really do see and feel that ethos in our city all the time today.
Yeah. Oh yeah. You know, it from the moment that we created that flag that's right behind you. Like, from the moment we created that flag is the number outside of Washington D.C., which is crazy because like I don't even know what their flag looks like. I mean, I get the American flag. I don't know, but that's the most recognized municipal flag in the states. Like, which is crazy. That shows you the amount of pride that Chicagoans have. And like you said, we fly it everywhere, not just here. You know, we fly all over the world. You know what I mean? Like,
no, dude, I have been sewing it on all of my jackets. So no matter where I go, people know. Like I've had literally people who are from Chicago in like different countries come up to me. I've had people that are from that country saying, "You're from, you know, Chicago." I'm like, "Yeah, I love da da da." I've been to, you know, it's sort of this, I guess, sort of like this international passport of goodwill. Like whether you know our sports or you know our food or you know our lakefront, it always gets a conversation going. It's interesting. I was telling a friend, I said, you know, if you look at our flag, if you didn't know what it was, to me, it looks because it's got the stars and it's got the blue and the red. It reminds me a little bit of the Cuban flag, but it kind of reminds me. It's like it could be like the flag of a South American country, like you may have never heard of. And in a way, Chicago, while you know we are a world-class city, we're a city in Illinois. Chicago is, sorry to say, it's almost a nation unto ourselves, and that's not being arrogant. We really are.
Yeah, you know, you're right. Yeah. You want honestly, wherever we go, anywhere, there's a pride of like, you know, we oftentimes say, no, we're not going back to the United States. We're going back to Chicago. Literally. You know what I mean? Like, I'm going back to Chicago. Yeah. You know, like that's no matter how good a trip can be, no matter how much fun you can have on vacation.
Not too sad coming back to
Chicago. Right. I mean, it's especially if you leave the city in the summertime and come back in the summertime, the party doesn't end. All you do is you just double dutch your way back into some festival. You know what I mean? Or some kind of.
That's so true.
Yeah.
So true. Before we go, and I guess we have a couple minutes here. Sorry. I do want to know if you have the time, how did it come about that you guys got to work with the great, the amazing, the legendary Jeffrey Bear? When I saw that was happening, my head exploded. How did that come about?
So, if I remember correctly, I reached out to someone from WTTW.
Online, on Facebook, right?
No. I emailed someone. I found an email from a producer at WTTW, and I reached out and I said we would love to have. I don't know how to reach him, but we would love to have Jeffrey Bear on one of our episodes. And at the time, he was coming out with his show, the most beautiful places in Chicago, and we were like going back. It was COVID, like it was still 2021. And no one really knew too much about who we are. Like we were getting some traction, but not a lot. Yeah. And I knew it was like Dario's childhood dream to have Jeffrey Bear on. So I was like, we're gonna do whatever we can to do that. But so it took like a year for us to be, because maybe this is TMI, but like he was taking care of some family members, and like he didn't want to get exposed. He didn't want to be in a restaurant. Yep. And then he started recording like over the summer. That he does a lot of work, so it just took forever. And then he reached back out and he was like, I am so sorry. Yeah. He is like the sweetest guy, by the way. He is like one of our favorite people, actually. He reached back out and he was like, I am so sorry. Like whoever I was taking care of is now doing better. I'm happy to like plan something. So we did, we actually met in the Sears Tower.
In the Sears Tower, yeah.
And we talked about
the pink line, pink and green. Yeah.
Yep, the pink and green line. And
that was just nuts. It was honestly like him responding. We were like,
I was like, I have Jeffrey Bear's email.
But here's something else. Here's something else though. Before we even started the podcast, when Sarah and I first started dating, we're getting to know each other, right? We're in those stages, like the first few months of us dating in the middle of a pandemic, can't go nowhere, can't do anything. So Sarah said, hey man, look, let's watch this. This guy named Jeffrey Bear. I watch all his things. We literally went out and bought an Apple TV to put in our sunroom
so we could stream
all his things. Her sister sat from almost 10 hours?
Yeah.
Almost 10 hours.
Like pretty much
everything
that he's put out that we could possibly watch in one day.
So that was like a tone setter for like I think that was 2020. So a whole year and a half later is when we finally met. It was 2 years. It was 2 years later because it was more than that almost.
I don't know.
Yeah. Anyway, it was a while because like we did both times last year. So early 2023, and then more recently was it November?
Yeah, before the second
iteration
of
and we I mean that time was even sweeter because they reached out to us.
I was like,
oh, that's awesome. I love the fact, like there's an old adage, they say never meet your heroes, and so when I hear a story like this where again somebody that we've all been watching for years and we've learned so much from, and then you get this opportunity to meet this person, you just pray. I'm like, oh, please let it be cool.
It was so
please
nice.
let it be cool. And then the fact that he is just makes me feel so good.
He was because he felt so bad that he couldn't meet with us. He actually invited Dario on the Great Chicago Quiz Show.
Yeah.
And Dario was a guest on the show because it was virtual, so he was able to do that. And he was like, I'm so sorry that I can't do it in person right now, but I'd love to. Because we recorded our podcast in person. It's hard for us to do it virtual. Yeah. We're in like the spaces and stuff. Yeah. So I was like, he didn't need to do that. You know what I mean? Like you're Jeffrey Bear. You could just say fuck off and like keep it moving. Like you don't need to be nice to just two random people. Right. But like he was amazing.
Yeah, it was honestly that's probably one of our most fun moments, but me particularly because he's the whole reason why I even want to be a tour guide in the city and talk about Chicago. So what a dream.
That makes me feel really good because again he's one of those that he wouldn't have been doing what he's been doing for Chicago for as long as he did if it wasn't for again the love of it. And so I love seeing worlds collide because again I was watching you guys and it would be like having Tom Skilling over for coffee, the great Tom Skilling, who's retiring now. And just again, he's that level of greatness, if you're Chicago. So that's super cool. Wow. I again, thank you guys for coming on today. Again, this has been a real treat for me. Obviously, Chicago guy, big municipal history nerd. And from the moment that I started watching you guys, I'm just like, oh, these are just real folks. These are just real folks, and I was hooked ever since. I've got my whole family watching you guys. I've got folks across the country watching you guys, and so I appreciate your time. I'm so excited to watch you guys continue to grow, and I would love, again, I know you have lots of things to do. I would love to bring you guys back to discuss other stuff if you're interested.
I mean,
we'll tell you right now.
We get to talk about Chicago for like an hour.
Yeah, we're good.
We're down.
You know,
I could go another 3 hours, right?
Yeah, literally.
Yeah. You know, we'll say thank you though, for being part of the legion of our fans and supporters that keep us going. You know, we don't make money off of this podcast, so it is purely off of people like you and others who listen to us and just keep us, even if it's just motivated to get up and record and have something ready for Monday morning. So thank you and everybody else who listens to us for giving us a chance. You know what I mean? So
you're the reason we haven't taken a single week off.
You guys are crushing it. You're doing great. One last thing before we go, Sarah, where should I take my family for Jordanian food? And they've never had it. Is there a place where should I go? Because I've never had Jordanian food, and I'm like, I know who to ask.
Yes. So if you want like real Jordanian food, unfortunately, you're gonna have to leave the city.
Okay.
But I think it's worth it. You can have like street food, like Jordanian street food in Chicago. There's a ton of those places. But well, there is a place in the city, but it's street food. Okay, so there's Ragadan. Ragadan in Uptown does like the best falafel sandwich. They also have like lentil soup and stuff like that is like quintessentially Jordanian food. But if you want like a sit-down meal of things we would eat at home, you have to go to Al Bawadi, there's one in Niles and one in Bridgeview, and those are like my two top.
Can you spell that for me? A-L?
Yeah. A-L, and then like a hyphen, B-A-W-A-D-I.
Oh, Bridgeview, yes. And there's one in Niles too. Okay.
One in Niles, one in Bridgeview, yeah. The Niles one is newer. I haven't been to that one, but the Bridgeview, I've been going to it for like, I remember going there when my family would visit here, so. I don't know why they would take us to a Jordanian restaurant when we were visiting from Jordan. But,
right, just cook at home, right? Yeah.
Right.
That's great. So Ragadan and Al Bawadi saved, and we'll check these out.
Yes,
but awesome. So again, guys, thanks so much. Where can everybody who's watched this follow you, get your support you, watch your stuff, listen to your stuff?
Yep. If you search 77 Flavors of Chicago, you can find us on YouTube and on 15 to 20 different podcast applications. So you got your choice there. On social media, it is 77 Flavors Shy everywhere, all platforms, and our website, 77flavorsshy.com. Shy is in CHI. So, and then if you want to, go ahead and follow Traveling While POC. It's our new podcast that we're doing around the world. So we got some fun stuff. We literally just planned yesterday coming for that. So stay tuned for that. But that's how you can find us.
Thank you so much. Keep up the good work, and we'll see you guys around.
Thank you.
Thank you, Kyle. Appreciate you.